Hey YouTube, we are back again this week for another video portion of the Daly Dose Sports Podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos every single week. Hope everyone out there is doing well, staying healthy. Hey, this week on the Daly Dose YouTube video, we've got some sports news to talk. Major League Baseball's back. The NHL and NBA are coming back like this week. And we have a trade in the NFL, and there's actually a big fight scheduled for September. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to watch it. But let's go ahead and jump into some sports news right now. Hey, Major League Baseball got started last Thursday, and honestly, it couldn't have been more 2020 than it was. Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Anthony Fauci, who has said we probably shouldn't be bringing sports back anytime soon, contradicted himself yet again when he was the guy who threw out the first pitch on Thursday night's opening game of the 2020 season in Washington, D.C. between the Washington Nationals and the New York Yankees. So Fauci goes up there with his mask, he takes the mound, and of course, his pitch is horrible. It ends up closer to first base than to home plate. I mean, his pitch made Mariah Carey's look good. His pitch, it was so bad, it made 50 Cent's pitch look, okay, it wasn't quite that bad, but you get what I'm saying. His pitch, much like his virus predictions, were way off. Now, I did think it was interesting, and maybe this is just me, but I thought it was a little bit interesting when ESPN showed highlights of his pitch later, and they were like, and Dr. Anthony Fauci throws a perfect 100-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle of the plate. That's the leader in sports, kids. Remember that. There's no bias there. That's the leader in sports. The NHL is scheduled to get started again on Saturday, with play set to officially resume with the Stanley Cup qualifiers this Saturday, August 1st. There are going to be 3 games in Toronto. There are going to be 2 games in Edmonton. The qualifiers will consist of 2 round robins, one for the top 4 teams in the East, another with the top 4 teams in the West. That will determine seeding for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and 8 best-of-5 series with the winners advancing to the playoffs. So basically, the NHL is just jumping right full on into like playoff mode. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs will take place in those hub cities. Edmonton is going to host each conference final, and the Stanley Cup final is tentatively scheduled for September 22nd. It will end no later than October 4th. But we did also get some future news about the NHL. Did you realize there's actually going to be a new team in the NHL starting up next year? Seattle's NHL team, which will make its debut in the 2021-2022 season next year, this past week finally announced their name. They're going to be the Seattle Kraken. They did also announce their color scheme: icy blue with navy blue and sharp red accents. The NHL officially named the NHL did officially name Seattle its 32nd team back in 2018. They had to buy in for $650 million as an expansion fee. Kind of interesting though. Seattle announced they would be naming their team the Kraken. We know Seattle's had a lot of, controversy up there. They've had a lot of protesting, that kind of thing. I thought it was kind of interesting. In a related story, you might not have seen this in the news, a number of Seattle sea creatures have actually taken to the streets to protest the name the Kraken. They call it troublesome, and they say it has some aquatic appropriation. See where that all ends up going. We'll see where that all ends up going. The NBA is set to return tomorrow with 22 teams. The NBA is set to return tomorrow with 22 teams playing 8 remaining regular season games. That is going to seed their playoffs, and then they will play off those playoffs to the championship. We're actually going to be talking a lot of NBA here in just a few minutes on The Dose. But we did get some news over the weekend that the New York Knicks have signed Tom Thibodeau to a 5-year deal to become their next head coach. Now, Tom Thibodeau, say what you want about the guy, he sometimes is very hard on his players, but he has had success developing young rosters. But I'm telling you right now, he's going to have his work cut out for him with the New York Knicks. New York was 21-45 before the shutdown this season. They were set to miss the playoffs for the 6th straight season. And the problem, you can spin it however you want. You can talk about the lack of talent. You can talk about they need a better coach. Maybe they need a GM. The problem is that the owner is completely inept. I expect Tom Thibodeau to have some success, but at the end of the day, you're trying to put a Band-Aid on like a chainsaw cut. So that's not going to happen. Moving over to the NFL. The NFL's Player Association Board of Representatives has approved a plan that is going to have NFL training camps opening as scheduled this week. The league held a meeting with coaches, general managers, presidents, and ownership Friday, and it concluded with clubs approving new training camp and roster rules so that training camps can now open. And you might sit there and say, well, big deal. Was that ever an issue? Yeah, it was. Because of everything going on with the pandemic, there was talk that even though they have, a new kind of, that even though they were set to show up at training camp, not all people were really, not everyone was on board with that. They were worried about some safety things. They were worried about how is this season going to play out. But they got this all straightened out, and you are going to see training camps open this week. We'll see how that goes. We did also have an NFL trade take place over the weekend. The New York Jets traded unhappy all-pro safety Jamal Adams to the Seattle Seahawks, and they are getting first-round picks in each of the next 2 seasons, plus they get a 2021 third-rounder. Seattle also threw in veteran safety Bradley McDougald. That's a lot to spend for the Seahawks. And that's a lot to spend for a safety. I mean, I would rather build my team at the front than the back, but maybe that's just me. We know Seattle has had a history of having very, very good safeties. They feel like Jamal Adams can take in and fit a need for that defense. It's a lot to spend. Meanwhile, the Jets are going to get those 2 and then a third round pick. And we just know how the Jets are going to use, and we know how the Jets are going to use those picks. We know they're going to use them on the likes of guys like, Blair Thomas, Vernon Golston. We know how much success the Jets have when it comes to drafting players. I mean, what about the Jets' history tells us they're going to do anything with those top picks than screw them up completely and pick someone that won't be in the league any longer than 2 or 3 years? Nothing. That's what the Jets do. That's just how they roll. One thing to think about in this trade, though, I want you to think about this. Since taking over as head coach of the New York Jets, Adam Gase has gotten rid of a lot of players. He's gotten rid of Jay Ajayi, Jarvis Landry, Damian Williams, and now Jamal Adams. And I want you to think about this. Players that have left that weren't doing all that much he gets rid of people. He doesn't always like maybe the most talented guys. Players that have, I don't know if that's even right. Some players Adam Gase has gotten rid of in the past. He's gotten rid of Jay Ajayi, Jarvis Landry, Damon Williams, now Jamal Adams. He likes to get rid of guys. Players who got better once they left Adam Gase, Damian Williams, Ryan Tannehill, Devontae Parker, Kenyon Drake, Mike Gesicki. Adam Gase, you had better win because you're dumping a lot of talent and you don't really have anything to show for it that makes us think, oh, he's got a plan. He's got this all figured out. We're not really seeing any of that. Adam Gase is going to be gone soon if he doesn't do something in New York. He needs to get that mess turned around. Finally, we did get an announcement in boxing last week that we have to mention. Former undisputed heavyweight champion Mike Tyson is making a comeback. I know, you've seen the videos, I get it. Tyson is now 54. He is going to be fighting Roy Jones Jr. in an 8-round exhibition on September 12th in Carson, California. The bout will be broadcast on pay-per-view. I don't know who in the world is going to pay for that, as well as multimedia platform Triller. According to a news release, Triller will also show a 10-part docu-series leading up to the bout. Now, Tyson was 50-6 as a fighter, and we know he kind of got everything stirred up on social media the past few months when he posted footage of himself training. But keep this in mind. Mike Tyson last fought 15 years ago, and he got and he got beat by a guy named Kevin McBride in 6 rounds. Meanwhile, you have Roy Jones Jr. Jones is 51. His record as a fighter was 66-9. Good record. In his prime, Roy Jones was considered one of the greatest boxers ever. He won titles at middleweight, super middle, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. But also remember, Jones last appeared in a professional fight back in February of 2000. Jones last appeared in a professional fight back in February of 2018. He beat a guy named Scott Sigmund by decision. Never heard of Scott Sigmund before or since. And the last guy that he really fought, Enzo Maccarinelli knocked Roy Jones out in 4 rounds over in Russia. That was in 2015. Hey, I understand social media creates some excitement for a fight like this. God damn it. For this weird exhibition. But does anyone really want to see this? I don't want to see this. I'm not going to watch this. I will guarantee this. I don't even want to hear like the introductions. Now in the blue corner, wearing the blue Depends undergarments and the gold orthopedic shoes, iron deficient Mike Tyson. Yeah, this is going to be a lot like the boy band that is still doing shows like in their 60s. That's not how I want to remember them. Do you really want to remember that boy band breaking a hip when they do their patented dance move? No, I'm good on all that. I don't want to watch this fight at all. Okay, YouTube, make sure that you go over and you check out the rest of the podcast. I'll leave a link for it here in the comments on YouTube. This week on the show, we're actually going to hang out with a friend of the show. We're going to be discussing what we might expect from the NBA's return to playing. Going to be talking about some contenders, going to talk about some pretenders, and we're going to be making our picks for the NBA Finals that we've been waiting so long for. So make sure you go out and you check out the full podcast. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you all next week.